enrichment doesn't mean like air conditioning, and it doesn't mean to jack up your car. Enrichment is a bad word.
So what do we do when we have a president who is in clear decline, who is already intellectually incurious, the most ignorant man to ever hold the office, but also now is suffering from the ravages of age? And he's surrounded by sycophants, bootlickers, ass kissers, people who will not challenge him or even sound the alarm. That's me ringing a bell. Or even sound the alarm that there's some serious stuff going on here and we need to rectify this situation. What do you do? Well, we need to come up with an answer because we are currently being faced with that situation exactly as I describe it. Donald Trump yesterday, before yesterday, but he sat for an interview with Maria Bartiromo, the same conspiracy theory reporter, journalist from Fox News, who brought us the conspiracy theory about Dominion voting systems that was emailed to Sidney Powell and then forwarded to Maria Bartiromo from a woman who said that the wind tells her she's a ghost. And so Maria Bartiromo, brilliant, thought, oh, this is a credible source. Let me bring this to the American people. She interviewed Donald Trump, and I have two clips for you that really exemplify. They are emblematic of the problem before us as a nation and a people with myriad problems that need solved and have no one in the room to solve them. The first should be making Alex Thompson and Jake Tapper just salivating at the prospect of writing another book about cognitive decline, right? I mean, it's crickets from the peanut gallery. They're nowhere to be found. They're too busy trying to forward the GOP agenda and white supremacy. Thanks a lot, fellas. Here's Donald Trump explaining the dangers of uranium enrichment in a way that really should strike fear into you, and not in some panic, oh my God, what is happening? But like, what is happening here? Watch this from Donald Trump. Again, brilliant mind, unparalleled genius from Donald Trump.
But it's been an amazing period of time.
When you went to the Middle East and you strengthened those relationships with all of those countries you just mentioned, did you have an idea that you would have to do something with regard to Iran? Because you teased it a little. You said, look, they've got to come to the table and talk. Something's going to happen.
Well, it was getting a little bit hot, and we knew they had a lot of sites, probably 3 plus the 1. But they had 3 main sites, and we knew they're going to have to either give them up. And I thought we could do it during negotiation, and we just about had it done. And then they said, we want enrichment. Enrichment doesn't mean like air conditioning, and it doesn't mean to jack up your car. Enrichment is a bad word. And I said, you got so much oil, what do you need that for? And they said, well, we need it. And I wouldn't let that happen. I think people wouldn't have understood it if I allowed that to happen. So we had a 60-day talk, and that delayed them a lot. And then we said, let's go at it. And it just worked out. And we wanted to work out also for Iran. They were beaten up, and so was Israel. In all fairness, they were both very tight. We call it the 12-day war. That was an intensive war. But the thing that I wanted to do, and I've said it on your show, if you look back 30 years ago or 25 years, we've been doing your show a long time, and nobody like you. But you look back at the early interviews, I would say.
Wait. Sir, with tears in my eyes, Donald Trump, do you mean to tell me that the Iranian nuclear weapons program that they seek and the high-tech uranium enrichment process doesn't mean like air conditioning or jacking up your car? What? I thought for sure that the science behind uranium enrichment in order to satisfy the frothy lust for a nuclear weapons program certainly meant air conditioning. and jacking up my truck. That's where we are. So look, let's offer as much fairness and charity as we can to this situation. Does Donald Trump, is he just communicating to his low information rube base, the Fox News viewers who are obsessed with jacking up their trucks and air conditioning? I mean, what is going on here? Where is the media? Certainly you're not going to find them at Fox News asking any tough questions whatsoever. But I would expect people in the mainstream media and the regular, normal corporate media that has already bent the knee largely to be asking questions. Would you not? Don't they owe it to us? After all, they luxuriate under the umbrella of a constitutional protection. It wasn't just that moment. Here he is talking about tariffs in about the most nonsensical way possible, where he can't conjure the name of the Prime Minister of Japan, and instead calls him Mr. Japan.
So July 9th is coming up. What are you going to do about the end of the pause in the tariffs?
It's so simple. We're sending letters out. I'd rather do it now. My guys, hey, I have great guys, Scott, Howard, other people, Jameson. They're talking to all these countries. We made a deal pretty much with India. We made a deal with China. We made a deal with UK, great people. We made deals. But I'd rather just send them a letter, a very fair letter, saying, congratulations, we're going to allow you to trade in the United States of America. You're going to pay a 25% tariff or 20% or 40 or 50%. I would rather do that. So when I get,
We're not trying to extend the pause?
I don't think I'll need to, because I could. There's no big deal. It's like TikTok. I'm extending that, but no big deal. We have a buyer for TikTok, by the way. I think I'll need probably China approval. And I think President Xi will probably do it.
Who's the buyer?
I'll tell you in about 2 weeks.
A big technology company there.
Very, very wealthy people. It's a group of very wealthy people. But what I want to do is, and what I will do just sometime prior to the 9th, is we'll send a letter to all these countries. There's 200 countries. You can't talk to all of them, no matter how many people you have. You can't talk to all of them. We'll send a letter and we'll say we would consider it a great honor, and this is what you'll have to do to shop in the United States. We're like a department store, to shop in the United States, and you'll pay a 25% tariff, and we wish you a lot of luck. And that's the end of the trade deal, because we have something that nobody has. But if I didn't get elected, I'm telling you, we wouldn't have had a country left. You know that better than anybody. Nobody covers it better than you. If I didn't turn this thing around, this big ship around, we turned it around. Just like those ships coming out of China, they were coming and loaded, and in the middle of the ocean, they were forced to go back because at 145% tariff, Walmart, nobody wanted their product. And that caused a big problem for China. And then I helped China.
So
by reducing it.
We still don't know. We don't have the clarity on what you're going to do with these expiration of these pauses. July 9th?
No, I thought I
August
just
12th
said
with
it.
China.
No, I thought I just said it. You ready?
You're going to send letters.
I'm going to send letters. That's the end of the trade deal. I could send one to Japan. Dear Mr. Japan, here's the story. You're going to pay a 25% tariff on your cars.
So for all of the talk about 90 deals and 90 days, and Donald Trump is the greatest negotiator, he'll just bring everyone to the table and solve all of our economic woes with his disastrous tariff policy that's already crashed the stock market once. Now it's not 90 days and 90 deals in 90 days. It's, I'm going to write him a letter. You want to shop here? Okay, Sonny. You can shop here, but you got to pay 25%. I'm going to send letters on the trade deal. I could send one to Japan. Dear Mr. Japan, here's your story. Donald Trump is not fit. He is not capable. He's not able. He's not suited to the work. He's suited to grifting. He's suited to shilling. But he's not suited to this. And we're all going to suffer for it while they push through this insane budget bill that will rob Americans of their health care. cutting nearly $300 billion from food assistance to hungry children. While they deny that all of this is going to happen, when it happens, they'll somehow find a way to blame the Democrats. And largely, corporate media is asleep at the wheel. Some of them are actively working in service to the Trump agenda. Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson from Axios, while they cash their big fat checks. Maybe they want the insane budget bill, the big beautiful bill. Maybe they want that passed because they made so much cash off their book deal trashing Joe Biden that now they need to protect that wealth that they created through their lies and their conspiracies. And they want to protect it through the tax cuts that Trump is offering. It's just a cycle. It's like a human centipede of garbage from these people.
This big bad bill cuts more than $200 billion from food assistance, potentially affecting 4 million children and 7 million adults nationwide.
Donald Trump and Republicans are so comfortable with their lies about their agenda, about their legislation, about the very real damage that they're going to do with this budget bill, that they're just openly admitting, oh yeah, it's going to hurt some people. Oh yeah, it's going to be real bad news. Donald Trump was on Truth Social yesterday at 5:27 p.m., just last night, early in the evening. And he posted this, admitting that there will be untold damage, but warning Republicans, dial it back a little bit. Don't do too much damage because after all, y'all, we still have to get reelected. This is what he posted. For all cost-cutting Republicans, of which I am one, remember, all caps, you still have to get reelected. Don't go too crazy. We will make it all up times 10 with growth more than ever before. Now, explicit in this, not implicit. This is not, you don't have to read between the lines. Don't go too crazy means go crazy, hurt people, create damage, but don't go too crazy because after all, we still have to get reelected. Where are the sirens? Where is the mainstream media talking about this? I don't know either. This bill is going to rip health insurance from nearly 16 million Americans. $300 billion in cuts to food assistance. Many of those people that rely on food assistance in this country are children in poverty. Kids like little Jesse growing up on welfare, on food stamps, literally eating the government cheese. We had a pantry filled with the white boxes with like generic letters, Farina, all kinds of what we called commodities. I don't know what they were actually called. They may have been called that. Hungry kids. Okay, that's enough damage, but don't do too much. We got to get reelected to do more damage. Make it incremental, Donald Trump says. There are other deleterious, very damaging effects of this budget bill. One is the exorbitant money that we're going to be pouring down the gullets of the mushmouth dildo with ears. A human sex toy took the stage at the Faith and Freedom Conference. All these Christians just praising Jesus and clapping, applauding, hooting and hollering for the human rights abuses of the mass deportation effort of Donald Trump. You know, just like Jesus would. And Tom Homan himself, over the weekend, on my birthday actually, took to the stage and explained, listen, this is why we got to get this bill through. If you like what we're doing now, just wait until we get more funding. We will just make record-setting pace abusing humans while he lies about what U.S. law is and is not. Watch this.
We're doing exactly what President Trump promised. We're going to do the worst first, and we're doing that. However, the media's been hitting me up lately. Well, Homan's lying. They're not arresting just criminals and public safety threats. They're arresting non-criminals. What they're afraid to tell you is Yeah, they're in the country illegally, so they're on the table too. So I was with the president yesterday during the big, beautiful bill ceremony at the White House, and he made a mistake and let me to the microphone. We need that big, beautiful bill passed. I'm listening to me. I'm telling you right now, they passed that bill. We're going to have more money than we ever had to do immigration enforcement. You think we're arresting people now? You wait till we get the funding to do what we got to do. And so when we get that funding, we can put more agents on the field, right? Because we need the money is going to help us hire more contract help. So there shouldn't be a badge and a gun sitting at a desk doing keystrokes with some administrative duty. That should be a contractor. The badge and gun needs to be on the street, looking for those national security threats and public safety threats. So that's going to give us more boots on the ground. It's going to give us more beds. This morning I looked at the beds. We got about 1,400 empty beds. 1,400. We'll fill them by tomorrow. So we're playing this chess game. We got to move people out and put people in. No, we need 100,000 beds so I can fill 100,000 beds, and we're going to move them as fast as we can. But we need more beds so we don't. In the morning we say, okay, well, we only got this many beds, so let's only arrest this many people. No, we should be coming to work every day saying, get everybody you can get, and we got the bed waiting. That's where we need to get to.
First of all, it might be semantics. Maybe, but I don't think so. There is no law. There is no statute. There is no crime to be charged of residing in this country illegally. That's not a crime. There's no crime. There's no statute. Crossing the border is a crime, a misdemeanor, like reckless driving or something, or driving without a license. That's the level of crime that crossing the border is. But being in the country illegally is not a crime. So he's a liar. He's not only what he is, he can't, you can barely understand a word he says. And I don't know if he's in the middle of a bender, he's just coming off of it, he's wildly hungover, he's in the midst of it, he's getting ready to be hungover. Who knows what's going on with the bulb nose, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer stand-in, Tom Homan, who knows? But this is damaging. This is what the bill that Donald Trump is talking about, warning Republicans not to go too crazy about, is going to do. While the Christians, they can't get enough. Yes, be cruel. Harm children. Harm other Christians. They don't even have enough compassion and empathy and love and decency for people of their own faith. But if you want it explained in more articulate detail than I do, sorry, I'm who I am. This is what you got. Here's Mallory McMorrow. She is right now a state senator in the state of Michigan, but she's running for Senate in Michigan. And she explains it very well. I don't know how much of this I'm going to play, probably a couple minutes. There'll be a timer, as always, in the corner of the clip. You can skip ahead if you've already seen it. But she, in an impassioned way, armed with information, armed with the detail that should be communicated, exactly what this bill aims to do and exactly who it will harm.
Today, we are on the verge of the single largest redistribution of wealth from poor and working class Michiganders to the rich in our nation's history. That's what we're staring down in this so-called big, beautiful bill. And sure, if you're already wealthy, this bill is going to be great for you. If you earn more than $715,800, congratulations, you will get a tax cut of over $50,000. That tax cut alone is significantly higher than the $39,500 that the average Michigander earns in an entire year. Are you a foreign investor? Congratulations. Collectively, you will all get $23 billion in tax cuts next year alone. Are you in a position to leave more than $7 million to your heirs? Congratulations. You will get a cut to the estate tax. But how does this bill pay for all of this? By cutting the services that you rely on. This big bad bill cuts more than $200 billion from food assistance, potentially affecting 4 million children and 7 million adults nationwide. In Michigan, SNAP provides vital food assistance to over 1.4 million Michiganders. That's approximately 15% of our state's population. SNAP dollars fueled $2 billion in economic activity supporting farms and grocery stores, especially in our rural communities. But colleagues, proponents of this bill, and I have heard it here today, will argue that it's just about cutting so-called waste, fraud, and abuse, and that these cuts are necessary, and that enacting these cuts will benefit everybody. That argument is a flat-out lie. The University of Michigan economist Justin Wolfers analyzed the impact of all of the Trump policies combined. The cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and SNAP found in this big bad bill, the tax cuts here that overwhelmingly benefit the rich, and Trump's reckless tariff policy that adds cost to the food and the goods that so many of us rely on in our daily lives.
That's going crazy. The largest wealth transfer in the history of this country, in the history of a country famous for wealth inequality. This is going to be the largest transfer of wealth from the poor to the wealthy in the history of our nation. Harming poor, working class, children, desperate, seeking the American dream, yearning for some scrap of a bootstrap to pull themselves up by. Don't go too crazy, Donald Trump says. We still got to get reelected. Don't go too crazy.
But he's a communist, and he's a pure communist. I think he admits it.
How do you respond? Are you a communist?
No, I am not.
You know, Zohran Mamdani must be a real terrifying character to Republicans because they are quaking in their little boots about the prospect of having him be the mayor of New York. One, because it means Eric Adams, the armed agent of the state, the jackbooted thug, the facilitator of human rights abuses while he was a cop, and now that he's mayor, is not going to be there. After he was given a deal and his prosecution was taken off the table. He decided, I'll be a fascist enabler. After all, I spent my entire life just being a fascist cop. Why not help Donald Trump if it helps me? And yesterday, the interview aired, portions of the interview aired with Donald Trump and Maria Bartiromo, where she asks him about Zohran Mamdani. And he lies. And look, it's very likely Donald Trump is just so stupid, so intellectually incurious, just the most ignorant man to ever hold the office, that it's very likely he doesn't know what actually the differences are between capitalism, communism, and socialism, and all the different jingoistic nonsense, fear tactic words they try to use that I think are wearing off in the zeitgeist. They're no longer saying democratic socialist isn't scary anymore. One is just a label. There are different versions. So there's different versions of progressives. I mean, Cenk Uygur calls himself a progressive while defending Donald Trump and shaking hands and being all lovey-dovey with Nazis like Charlie Kirk. So there's a spectrum of progressives. He's not my flavor of progressive. So Donald Trump lies. We're going to get to a couple clips here of exactly who Zohran Mamdani is and what he wants to do for the city of New York, and hopefully be an example to other politicians on a national stage of what we can accomplish if we stop with the fear-mongering and trying to cast aspersions about these different labels like democratic socialist. Watch our intellectually incurious moron emperor Donald Trump talk about the democratically nominated mayoral candidate for New York City.
What did you make of the New York Democrat primary? Mamdani.
He's a communist. I think it's very bad for New York. I don't know that he's going to get in. It's inconceivable that but he's a communist, and he's a pure communist. I think he admits it, but I can't imagine it. But let's say this. If he does get in, I'm going to be president, and he's going to have to do the right thing, or they're not getting any money. He's got to do the right thing. It's shocking that I would have assumed that I used to say we will never have a socialist in this country. No, but we'll have a communist. I mean, he's a communist and going to be mayor of New York. So I was very surprised when I said, I never heard of him. I don't know who he is.
He's he's a pure communist. Boy, yeah, he's communist. He's a pure communist, says Donald Trump. I think he admits it. Listen, there's one thing I can guarantee you about Zohran Mamdani. I don't know him. I've never met him. I would love to. Maybe we'll get him on the show. But he's not afraid of what he believes. He was asked, and I'm going to play it here, but we'll play it a little later. But when he's asked about, do you think billionaires should exist? Well, Kristen Welker phrases it like Kristen Welker phrases questions, which is to say stupidly. But he's like, yeah, no, I don't. I don't think that we should have billionaires. He's not afraid of his opinions. So when he's asked yesterday by Kristen Welker about this comment from Donald Trump and being a communist, are you a communist? Flatly, plainly, he answers the question with no ambiguousness whatsoever. Watch this.
Well, let me ask you about what Donald Trump, the president of the United States, has had to say. He's had a lot to say about your campaign. He called you a communist. Because he's the president, I want to give you a chance to respond directly to him. How do you respond? Are you a communist?
No, I am not. And I have already had to start to get used to the fact that the president will talk about how I look, how I sound, where I'm from, who I am, ultimately because he wants to distract from what I'm fighting for. And I'm fighting for the very working people that he ran a campaign to empower, that he has since then betrayed. And when we talk about my politics, you know, I call myself a democratic socialist in many ways inspired by the words of Dr. King from decades ago, who said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism. There has to be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And as income inequality has declined nationwide, it has increased in New York City. And ultimately, what we need is a city where every single person can thrive. Not a communist. Democratic socialist. With a plan to help New Yorkers and New York. See, if rich people, if the wealthy would actually get in line with what works as an economic policy, they would understand that a rising tide does lift all boats. And if you lift up the middle class, the working poor, if you lift them up economically, they spend more money. They participate in the economy. And that helps all those fabulously rich people who own businesses. Does it not? See, trickle down is a lie that's been taught since the late 70s, early 80s as a mantra for the Republican Party. But when has it ever worked? Even when Donald Trump did his first round of wealth transfer with his tax scam in 2017 and said, oh, there's going to be so much investment by businesses. Now, they hoarded that wealth. They paid dividends to their stock holders. There was no, oh, we're going to invest in our employees. We're going to raise wages. They did not do that. It has been proven. It has been looked at. Researchers and economists. Mamdani knows that. And what he plans for New York City, in my opinion, is going to work fabulously well while corporate Democrats and Republicans both battle against him. Andrew Cuomo is going to keep himself on the ballot to hurt his chances of actually becoming mayor. Eric Adams is going to run as an independent, he's so afraid. Even though his case was dismissed with prejudice, they can't bring it again. This is what I'm talking about with Zohran Mamdani and what he believes and his steadfastness to the things he believes. He's not afraid of him. He's not embarrassed about him. She was asked, and listen to the way she frames the question horribly, about whether or not, do you think billionaires have a right to exist, as though they should be murdered or something, rather than, should we have billionaires? Should billionaires exist? She's asking, do the billionaires who exist now, do they have a right to exist? It's all nonsense. Watch this.
All right. You are a self-described democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country. And I look forward to work with everyone, including billionaires, to make a city that is fairer for all of them?
This question has been asked and answered dozens and dozens and dozens of times. It's not that you take their money from them. Oh, you're a billionaire? All right, the state is going to seize your assets. We have a tax system that works. You have a top tax rate, a progressive tax rate. Let's say not even what it was under Republican President Eisenhower, which was like 90%. That anything you make after $10 million, I'm just making up numbers here, $10 million. If you make $10 million and $1, that $1 after $10 million gets taxed at 90%. That's the way they did it in the 50s. And when Reagan came along with his trickle-down economics, his absolute destruction of the American economy and the middle class, they did away with that. And they're afraid. The wealthy the people who fund political campaigns are petrified at the energy and the emotion and the dedication to trying to change things for the better by a candidate like Zohran Mamdani. And when you got the president of the United States out there saber-rattling about it, you know exactly who the power structure is and what they're afraid of. Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe, but you can comment below. You can also call the voicemail line 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily@dollemore.com. If you want to help support this work, I would encourage you to do so. For $2 a month, you can help produce these videos. You can help me do that. You can click the join button below for $2 a month, become a channel member. You can also go over to patreon.com/IDoubtIt podcast. All those are great ways to help support this work. And follow me on social media if you're already there. If you're not, don't sign up. But if you are, @Dollemore. I'll see you next time. Until then, be genuine and take care of one another. They embraced his populist promises to make bus service free. Free bus service? I didn't know that. Now that I know, I have to really reconsider whether this guy's good. That's deplorable. It's not every day that you get to see defamation on international news program from a candidate running for mayor of New York City. And that's what happened yesterday. Eric Adams, the disgraced, jackbooted, fascist enabler, if not fascist himself, never saw police violence he didn't condone, became mayor, partnered with Donald Trump in his inhumane mass deportation effort, governed over a sanctuary city only to turn his back on human rights. I mean, it's all part and parcel, kind of standard operating procedure for a guy like Eric Adams, who just panders. During the debates when he was first running for office, he said he was going to retire in Israel because he loves Israel so much. That fucking guy's not retiring in Israel. He's not. Come on. It's such just disrespectful pandering too. Just gross. Anyway, he's on with Jake Tapper yesterday. And I think it was yesterday. Maybe it was the day before. And he's being asked about Zohran Mamdani, to which he just says insane lies that are based in racism and Islamophobia, that Zohran Mamdani is somehow some sleeper cell terrorist who supports Hamas. He gives no details. He's even pressed on it. When has he said that? Where has he said that? Give me an example. And he actually, he's such a dunce. He's such a moron, so lazy in his defamation that he says, oh yeah, you just look around, just do some research. You'll find the clips. Trust me, they're not out there. I looked for clips. I looked all over. There are no clips. Eric Adams is a liar. Not defamation. It's the truth. Watch mayoral candidate Eric Adams with Jake Tapper.
So I want to turn to your likely Democratic challenger, Mamdani, because you said recently that the Jewish community in New York should be concerned about him. You've accused him of using anti-Semitic rhetoric. What specifically has Mamdani said that you think is anti-Semitic?
pro-Hamas. Hamas is a dangerous terrorist organization that should be destroyed. When you embrace the philosophies of Hamas, not only what they do to their own people, but what they did in Gaza to lift them up and praise them, I think that's a clear indicator that something is wrong with that. But he has to
when did he praise Hamas? I don't recall him ever praising Hamas.
There's several videos, even during his days of being a rap artist, of praising Hamas and other terrorist groups. And so a little research, you'll be able to find it. But I'm not competing against him only for what he's done and praising Hamas. I'm competing against him because this is not a socialist city. And that much of what he's promising the people, which I think is really deplorable.
Two things. There's several videos, he says. If there's several examples of it, surely, certainly, most assuredly, you'd be able to come up with one example to tell Jake Tapper, Eric Adams, right? No. Instead, it's, and so, a little research, you'll be able to find it. And lastly, that last part. And that much of what his problem was promising to people, which I think is really, really deplorable. So what are these things that Eric Adams is promising that are deplorable? I looked into that too. Here's a headline from the New York Times. Free buses and billions in new taxes. Can Mamdani achieve his plans? The Democratic mayoral hopeful promises free child care, a $30 minimum wage, and a massive tax hike on the city's corporations. Here's a paragraph of the deplorable things that Mamdani wants to bring to New York City. Mr. Mamdani's singular focus on the city's affordability crisis resonated especially with young voters. They embraced his populist promises to make bus service free. Deplorable. What? Free bus service? I didn't know that. Now that I know, I have to really reconsider whether this guy's good. That's deplorable. Riding a bus for free? Ho. Find something else. Freeze rents on stabilized apartments. Dun, dun, dun. That's deplorable. Build city-owned grocery stores and offer free early child care. That's, oh my God. I mean, that's akin to being an adjudicated sexual predator. That's akin to bribery and corruption charges while you're actually the mayor of New York City. The actual deplorable thing that you did, Eric Adams, while you're trying to malign this young politician who has motivated individuals into politics. We want more participation in the process, and he's doing that. And you're trying to discourage that. So maybe you don't know what deplorable means, which is very likely. I mean, you are equally idiotic like your mentor, Donald Trump, your mentor in corruption, Donald Trump. But this is all just lies. Unfortunately, there is a segment of the population that hears alignment with terrorism. Oh, he said good things about Hamas? Well, no, he didn't. I looked for him, couldn't find it. Hamas is. That's the one thing that Eric Adams said that was right. Hamas is a dangerous terrorist organization that should be destroyed. Absolutely. Without doubt. No equivocation. Destroyed. Now, not at the cost of bombing and killing tens of thousands of women and children. No. But yeah, they need to be gone. Absolutely. They are malign, evil, disgusting. But that's not Mamdani's game. That's not who he is. It's a lie meant to strike fear. And the politics of fear are trafficked in by Republicans and by Eric Adams, who apparently calls himself a Democrat, or I guess now an independent. He's an independent now that he's running for office against. He didn't win the primary, so he's got to switch gears and try to throw a wrench in there. When Donald Trump is saying that it's a witch hunt, you know it's not a witch hunt. He said the same thing about Eric Adams, who is absolutely guilty. This is a remarkable story that is absolutely not getting enough traction. Benjamin Netanyahu is a Trump-like corrupt character. He's currently on trial for bribery and corruption and fraud. He is the Donald Trump of Israel, and he's been around forever. They can't get rid of this guy. He is absolutely the worst malign influence. He is a cancer on the body politic of the entire Middle Eastern region. A fascist. He has administered over a genocide. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have been bombed and killed. Surgically targeted. He's starving them, creating a famine that doesn't need to be there. There is so much international aid ready to save their lives, and it's blockaded. It's the worst. He's the worst. And this trial that's getting ready to take place just got postponed based on national security reasons and everything. But that postponement only came after Donald Trump took to Truth Social and threatened to withhold United States aid. You know, this wealthy country, Israel, needs our billions of dollars apparently to supplement the free health care that they give their citizens and the free college, you know, the things that we can't afford here. That's socialism. It's communism. But we'll pay for Israel so they can have it. Make it make sense. This is the post from Donald Trump on Truth Social where he threatened to withhold United States aid if they did not intervene in Benjamin Netanyahu's fraud trial. It is terrible what they are doing in Israel to Bibi Netanyahu. He is a war hero and a prime minister who did a fabulous job working with the United States to bring great success, capitalized for some reason, in getting rid of the dangerous nuclear, capitalized for some reason, threat in Iran. Importantly, he is right now in the process of negotiating a deal, capitalized deal, with Hamas. By the way, there's no record, there's no information on any deal whatsoever. They've not made any claims about a deal. It's just Donald Trump saying this. The deal, which will include getting the hostages, capitalized, back. How is it possible that the prime minister of Israel can be forced to sit in a courtroom all day long over nothing? Cigars, Bugs Bunny doll, etc. It is a political witch hunt, very similar to the witch hunt that I was forced to endure. This travesty of justice will interfere with both Iran and Hamas negotiations. In other words, it is insanity. Doing what the out-of-control prosecutors are doing to Bibi Netanyahu. And then here we go. The United States of America spends billions of dollars a year, far more than any other nation, protecting and supporting Israel. We are not going to stand for this, says Donald Trump. We just had a great victory with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu at the helm, and this greatly tarnishes our victory. Let Bibi go. He's got a big job to do, says Donald Trump. There's a whole lot there that we can analyze, and I'll only talk about a little bit. But when Donald Trump is saying that it's a witch hunt, you know it's not a witch hunt. He said the same thing about Eric Adams, who is absolutely guilty, who is absolutely corrupt, and his case was only dropped by Donald Trump's DOJ because he agreed to help them with their inhumane mass deportation effort. When Donald Trump says you're being railroaded, you're guilty as shit, right? Seems pretty self-evident. And if you're questioning whether or not this worked, well, it did. Here's a headline from the New York Post. Israel court postpones Netanyahu's corruption trial after Trump calls for case to be dropped. So, even Donald Trump, I took that link from a post Donald Trump, he posted his original tweet, riddled with spelling errors and punctuation errors and capitalization errors. He posted that at 6:57 p.m. on Saturday, June 28th. And then on the 29th at 2:18, he posted that New York Post article. New York Post, obviously conservative, owned by Fox News, Rupert Murdoch. I'm not going to read the contents of that article because it's just going to be filled with propaganda and lies. But we'll go to Reuters for an explanation of what took place. Court cancels Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu's trial hearings this week. The Jerusalem District Court canceled this week's hearings in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's long-running corruption trial, accepting a request the Israel leader made, citing classified diplomatic and security grounds. You know, when Donald Trump asks the question, how can he be expected to sit in a courtroom? Well, he can be expected to do so because he committed a crime, allegedly. And then that's how it works in the criminal justice system. In a system where justice is actually blind, and it doesn't matter whether you're powerful or out of power, rich or poor, known or unknown, it should act the same. But not if you're Donald Trump or Benjamin Netanyahu. You get special treatment because of classified diplomatic and security grounds is why you get out of it. It was unclear whether a social media post by U.S. President Donald Trump influenced the court's decision. Trump suggested the trial could interfere with Netanyahu's ability to join negotiations with the Palestinian militant group Hamas and Iran. The ruling, seen by Reuters, said that new reasons provided by Netanyahu, the head of Israel's spy agency Mossad, and the military intelligence chief justified canceling the hearings. Netanyahu was indicted in 2019 on charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust, all which he denies. He has cast the trial against him as an orchestrated left-wing witch hunt meant to topple a democratically elected right-wing leader. Fascist, who has administered over a genocide. He's a genocidal war criminal and the fraud and the bribery and all of the nonsense, that's the least of our worries when he's overseen the wholesale slaughter of an entire ethnic group of people. On Friday, the court rejected a request by Netanyahu to delay his testimony for the next 2 weeks because of diplomatic and security matters following the 12-day conflict between Israel and Iran, which ended last Tuesday. He was due to take the stand on Monday for cross-examination. It is insanity, and then, they read Donald Trump's stupid tweet or post, and then I'll just read this last paragraph. Trump said Netanyahu was right now negotiating a deal with Hamas, though neither leader provided details, and officials from both sides have voiced skepticism over prospects for a ceasefire. This is what counts for leadership in many places across the globe. This is what we have really done ourselves in with ushering in a new age of fascism in this world. Benjamin Netanyahu, Donald Trump, Viktor Orban, Bolsonaro, he's gone now, but Bolsonaro, Vladimir Putin, did I say Putin? Kim Jong-un.
The world saw the photos of you in the hallway with Mike Lee. The world saw his tweets and the callousness of it. How are you approaching day to day working with these people?
We can have our disagreements, and we have big disagreements, but we ought to be able to stay in touch with our humanity when something really horrible like this happens.
The funeral of assassinated Democrats Melissa and Mark Hortman was over the weekend. And it was a solemn occasion that was attended by former President Joe Biden, former Vice President Kamala Harris, obviously, friends of the two victims. Governor Tim Walz was there, a pallbearer, he was there. The family and friends, and both Republicans and Democrats were there. Donald Trump was not there, of course. Why would Donald Trump, a man who incites and encourages, promotes political violence, why would he be there when he played a role in what took place? Another person who wasn't there is Mike Lee, who mocked what took place on Twitter. He was confronted, but we'll get to that. He posted, you've probably already seen these. This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way, asserting that the assassin was a Democrat, was a Marxist, was a leftist. He was not. He was a registered Republican, anti-gay, anti-abortion, just allegedly the man who they say is the killer was the Belter guy, Vance Luther Belter. Mike Lee also tweeted this, "Nightmare on Wall Street," indicating that Walls had something to do with it, some role to play. And you may have seen that David Pakman and I were on Capitol Hill last week, right? That's been a long time now. Interviewing different senators and congresspeople. And I spoke to Tina Smith, who was a personal friend of Melissa Hortman. And it's where I started my questioning with her. And I'm going to play a little bit of this interview we had with her. And I want to tell you this. One, if you live in Minnesota, I am jealous. I'm not dazzled by politicians, almost as a rule. These people are just people, right? I don't dress up when I go see I dress the exact same way. Alex Padilla even made a funny little comment about it. Wishes he could go to work in jeans because I'm wearing jeans and a sport coat. These are people. They're not royalty. The president is just a person. He is a public servant, just like these people. So I'm not dazzled by these people. I'm not starstruck when I meet them. And I've never met Tina Smith, but let me tell you, I was dazzled by this woman. I was absolutely not starstruck, but amazed at her humanity. She's not one of these bomb throwers, these people who are attention-seeking clout chasers. She's not a Mike Lee. So when she quietly confronted Mike Lee in the hallway, I wanted to find out about what it is. How do you work with these people who you're supposed to be partners in governance with? How do you do it on a daily basis? Someone mocking the murder of your friend. And it was a great conversation. I hope that you enjoy it. Any questions you have, I think it's very likely we could have another encounter. We could have some follow-ups, and you could ask what you want to ask. Here is my interview with Tina Smith, where I was joined with David Pakman, and we talk about all of these issues, about what took place with her friend, about working with Republicans, and where do we go from here?
So, in the wake of the tragedy in your state with your friend, the person you knew, I just want to kind of ask a question about how it's been for you and your colleagues working in this environment with Republicans who are as callous as some.
Yeah.
The world saw the photos of you in the hallway with Mike Lee. The world saw his tweets and the callousness of it. How are you approaching day to day working with these people?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, I have had many colleagues, including some of my Republican colleagues, come up to me privately and say, express, condolences in a very real and human way, and that's what it should be like, right? We can have our disagreements, and we have big disagreements, but we ought to be able to stay in touch with our humanity when something really horrible like this happens. And I've even had some people who come up to me and kind of privately done a little fist bump, like, "I'm glad you did what you did," on the Republican side. Of course, it would be better if they did that publicly, because I think that part of what happened with Senator Lee and me is that, I needed him to hear from me directly how his words affected me and the people that I love and care about in Minnesota. That it wasn't going to be like another Twitter battle. It was going to be like, I'm a real person, and I need you to understand the impact of your words. And I think that's honestly what we need more of as we try to maintain our humanity in this incredibly difficult time. And when people are literally getting threats on their lives,
It seems that at one point the spectrum was sort of, we disagree about what the top tax rate should be, to things like, I don't think two men should be legally allowed to get married. And they felt palpably different, right? We now have, the spectrum is out the window where it's, I think my political opponents should be killed, which feels so far from any kind of substantive or productive political disagreement that I just wonder your view as to whether, has it gotten to a point where there are some that are so far outside the mainstream that you can't meaningfully have discourse anymore?
I mean, I struggle with that because, how do you have if you're going to try to get something done with somebody, you might disagree on 98%, but you've got to have a level of trust on the 2%. And it's a struggle to figure out how do you have any level of trust with somebody who is, pushing blatantly false conspiracy theories, who is, like literally making a joke out of the death of somebody that you care about. I mean, I really struggled with this after January 6th, and I saw, some of the Republicans in the Senate vote not to certify the election. And I'm like, how can I actually do business with somebody who can't even acknowledge that Joe Biden is the lawfully elected president of the United States? So I continue to struggle with it. But I also, I look for places, I always look for places where I can find some level of, for example, if I can work with one of my colleagues on something that's going to benefit a tribal nation in Minnesota because they have tribes in their state, and we can find a way of actually accomplishing something, then I'm going to take that opportunity.
Right.
Because I sort of feel like that's my job.
Do you feel like you showing up and the confrontation that happened? We need more confrontations. I don't know if you get the vibe. More of a confrontational kind of fella. Do you think that it has motivated your colleagues to this is the way forward? We need more of this, because I believe we need more of this.
I totally agree with you. I hope so. And I think, in the Senate, we have a tendency in politics, we talk about one another through other people. We engage in these sort of proxy wars with one another rather than going to it. And that's what I wanted to do with Senator Lee. I wanted him to hear from me directly. I didn't want it to be sort of in a back-asswards way through somebody else. And I think that's one of the reasons why people responded to it so much, because it felt like in some ways I was saying to him what a lot of other people wanted to say to him, and they could see it. And I totally agree with you. And conflict. I mean, if conflict is handled in a respectful way, or where you're treating somebody with dignity, even if you're truly confronting them on what you think is screwed up about what they're doing, I mean that's like something that you need to know how to do in a democracy. And don't you feel like sometimes we've kind of forgotten how to do that?
Some of us have forgotten how to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't name any names.
Yeah.
Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, I could go on
Yeah.
and on. But I mean, your partners in governance have abdicated their role as a constitutionally co-equal branch of government to cede that power to Donald Trump. And you don't have a partner in governance right now.
That's true.
Who's a part of the other party.
And I mean, at the very least, standing up for the prerogatives of the United States Senate and the responsibilities that we have been, authorized to hold in our Constitution. And when you have that, plus you have their just willingness to spout all sorts of things that I've got to believe they know are just not true. And then you've really undermined the ability that we should have as a democracy to actually do our jobs. And it's bad.
What's your sense of when it comes to, I mean, we could talk about the tax bill because it's sort of front and center, but I think bigger picture, one of the things my audience always asks about is the behind the scenes of getting these bills to the point where the vote happens and the sort of posturing and negotiating that happens between the parties. Is it collegial, sort of the way that, sometimes the two clients of lawyers are very much at odds?
Yeah.
But for the lawyers, it's sort of this is our job. It's not contentious in the way that it might be between the clients and the dispute. If we analogize that to the behind the scenes of what happens in the Senate, how do you bridge the gap on some of these fundamental disagreements with something as big as a tax bill?
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, it can be that way. You can have that, we agree, but we're just trying to get the best for our clients, get the best for our constituents. And those negotiations can happen. And, anytime you have a negotiation, you're looking for that, on a Venn diagram, you're looking for the place where the interests overlap, and you're trying to maximize that overlap. And I think you can see that happening on legislation. Not happening now. I mean, let's be really clear, because the Republicans are negotiating with themselves, and the Democrats have been pushed out. We have no say in what they're going to do. What we do have, as my friend Elizabeth Warren says, we might not be in power, but we are not powerless. And so we are using the power that we have to shine a light on what it is that they are doing, on helping to mobilize the opposition, on drawing attention to the terrible things that this bill will do. So we're using all of the power that we have. But in this moment, we're not being negotiated with because they don't want our votes. They're going to do it on their own. And that's why it's going to end up being so terrible for so many Americans.
What can we, as Americans, do? I mean, obviously you have a privileged position being in power. What can regular people and, random dum-dums on YouTube, I'll speak for myself, Dan.
Please.
What can we do from a messaging standpoint to move the needle? I mean, I don't think they are capable of shame. You lack dignity and you act like a ghoul. It just, some rules don't apply. But what message would you have to our audiences about what can we do?
Well, so I think first it's important to understand that Donald Trump's whole strategy, the strategy of these Republicans, is to try to convince us that we don't have any power, that our voices don't matter, that we might as well just give up and go home and not pay any attention because they're going to be the deciders. And so the first thing is to really resist that and to just not let them take our power away. Whether you're a United States senator or whether you're, a grandma holding up a sign over a freeway on Thursdays saying that, you don't believe in kings. And I think that is everybody can do something. It might be big or it might be small. Even the smallest thing makes a difference. I really believe that. I'm an organizer. I believe in the power of the grassroots to change things. And I believe that change is going to come to Washington. It's not going to come from Washington. And if you believe that, then you just do the things that you can do. You show up for it. I also just think that the thing that gives me faith in this moment is, they may well succeed in passing this big, beautiful, horrible bill, but the thing that gives me faith is that when people know about it, they think it's terrible. This is not what they voted for. If they voted for Donald Trump, and it sure as hell not what they want to see happen to their communities under any set of circumstances. People didn't vote to, take away people's support for their disabled children. They didn't vote to take away nutrition programs from kids and moms. That's not what they want. And so our challenge is to just get the word out and help people to understand what's happening, and then, get them mobilized and activated. And that's actually what I think truly is what's so important about what you all are doing, because most folks aren't tuning into the NBC Nightly News. No offense to NBC.
Maybe a little.
Yeah. I'm not judging here. I'm just saying that's not where most people are going to find out what's happening. They're going to people whose opinions they trust to tell them. And that's why I think, I'm not trying to suck up to you, but I think that's actually why what you're doing is important.
Well, on that note, and I know you've got to run soon, one of the things that worries me about that we've got to tell people what's going on is if you go back to the Obamacare days, Obamacare included the state Medicaid expansion, which states could opt to do or not to do. And some red state governors didn't do it. And then when it came to November of 2012 and that election, you had people in some of these red states who never got their health care, and they blamed Barack Obama. They didn't blame their governor who said, we're not participating in that expansion. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, in just this past election, we had some people who knew that abortion rights had been taken away from them in their states, and they knew that happened when Joe Biden was president, so they figured it was Joe Biden's fault, even though it was the fault of the Trump Supreme Court. Yeah. And so, there's no easy answer to that, as you well know. We have to, and I always hate it when people call folks that are low information voters, because most people are just really busy trying to figure out how to make their lives work and don't have time to pay a lot of attention to what we're doing here in Washington or what's happening in their state house. But then there are moments where you see really strong, exciting leaders who show up and are able to communicate and are talking about delivering real change for people, and those folks are breaking through. I think I've been following the New York mayor's race super closely, but I think in a way we saw that a little bit yesterday. Somebody who was strong, compelling, was talking about the issues that matter in people's lives, and he really broke through. So
you showed up today, and when you confronted Mike Lee. So we appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it. We'll do it again.